right. So we have a few colleagues who have their microphones on. If you can turn them off, that would be great. So yeah, thank you very much for gathering again for our seminar series. Sorry for the late start. We had a technical hitch, as I explained earlier. We are privileged to have our own Dr. Nuhu Yidana, who is a lecturer in law and a UG convener at the College of Law at SOAS, University of London. We are privileged to have Dr. Nuhu Yidana to discuss issues arising in the northern part of Ghana. So we welcome Dr. Nuhu Yidana to discuss and throw insights on peace from within, a legal and anthropological analysis of the Bawku Chieftaincy disputes. Those of us who have been following the disputes in the north, we have Dr. Nuhu Yidana to give us more insights and possibly latest developments as to how peace is being organized in that part of Ghana. Thank you very much, Dr. Nuhu Yidana. Yeah. I'll leave the microphone for you now.
Thank you so much, Prof, for giving me this global platform to share part of my research over the period with the community and our other interested persons who are also back in Ghana and across the various parts of the world. But before I begin, I would like to share my slides. So permission to do so.
Sure. I'm going to give you the right to...
I think I've shared it.
Yeah, great.
Okay. So as our respected colleague has indicated, what I'm going to present on is looking at peace from within, a legal and anthropological analysis of the Bawku Chieftaincy dispute. We are all well aware of the damage the issue is causing to the entire country. And that has actually been a disturbing issue. And I'm very happy to actually contribute to this discussion and to see how best the parties can look at it to resolve the matter from within. So in this particular presentation, what I will look at is, first, I'll try to provide a brief overview of the dispute. Then I'll look at the core focus of the dispute, the legal lens on it. Then I will now do what I will describe as a comparative analysis of the contested claims of both parties. Then I will look at it with respect to the constitutional guidance in resolving such matters. And alongside the discussion, I'll be pointing out a number of potential pathways by which the matter can be amicably resolved by the parties themselves reflecting on the internal factors that glue them together, which is a big incentive for them to actually give peace a priority from within. And I will highlight them at the end of the day, and then we will now turn our attention to look at questions and answers. So if you have questions based on the presentation, I'm happy to address that afterwards. So in talking about the overview, I will first of all take our lens to our president, who recently made a statement that Bawku, which has always been a booming and prosperous commercial center, is now a pale shadow of itself. Many professionals have fled the area. Public service workers are refusing to be posted there. This is really a disturbing, development, which is really not good enough. And I know the area I'm going to speak about is a sensitive issue, which even angels are cautious in treading along that line. And this particular conversation is only gearing towards what we can do, what we can reflect on to realize peace for our own good and for posterity to have the shared benefit of the decisions, the sacrifices we all are willing to take if we actually reflect on what actually ties us more than what divides us. So first of all, the conflict, as part of the overview, the conflict started in 1957 in June. That was when the Najuri skinned Muhammad Yirmiya as the chief of Bawku. And a youth group also declared Abu Grago Azoka as the chief on the 7th of June 1957. So the Najiri enskinment was on the 6th of June. And on the 7th of June, the Abu Grago was also declared as the chief of Bawku, bringing into being or into shape for the first time over 2 decades. For the first time after, over 2 centuries, that, the area happened to witness for the first time 2 rival chiefs in Bawku. And when that happened, it is on record that the Najuri, indeed, after then, we had the Mamprugu, State Council. And the Mamprugu State Council comprises of all the chiefs in the present day Upper East region and the Northeast region. They were all under the umbrella, the Mamprugu State Council. So the Mamprugu State Council instituted an action against Abu Grago for holding himself or declaring himself, or for him being declared by others as the chief of Bawku. Indeed, when the matter was filed before the magistrate court, before the court could have the opportunity to look into the issue, the action was filed in August, and in September, the government also set up the Opoku Afari Committee to look into the matter. The committee looked into it. In fact, the Mamprugu State Council is on record to have resisted the formation of the committee, but the committee went on with the process, and the Mamprugu representatives appeared before the committee, and the committee gave its verdict in favor of Abu Grago. Now, when the committee gave its verdict, the government adopted the decision of the committee, but varied the pronouncement. Indeed, there was one key thing. The committee terms of reference was for them to look into the whether Abu Grago was validly elected and skinned as a chief or installed as a chief of the Bawku area. Now, the committee came out with a conclusion that he was elected and installed as a chief of the Bawku area, of the Kusasi area. Now, when the government was to adopt that decision, the government went on to indicate that he has been skinned as a chief of Bawku, and this the Mamprusi resisted before the High Court. The High Court, presided over by Justice Olenu, overturned the decision, and the government filed an appeal before the Court of Appeal. The Court of Appeal overturned the decision, and the reasons why the Court of Appeal did so, I will show you shortly. But when the Court of Appeal overturned the decision, the Abu Grago continued to reign as a chief until 1966, when Kwame Nkrumah was overthrown. So when Kwame Nkrumah was overthrown, the Mamprusi had the government, in fact, the government came out with a new decree, NLCD 112, that disenskinned all chiefs that were disenskinned by Kwame Nkrumah government. And there were several chiefs across the country that suffered as a result of Kwame Nkrumah approach to the chieftaincy institutions. So when that happened, the NLCD restored all the chiefs, including the chiefs in the Bawku area, which went in favor of the Mamprises. And the Mamprises continued to reign as the leadership of the Bawku territory until 1983. I want to just jump the gun because in 1980, 1979, Abu Grago again got some youth to declare him a chief again. But when that happened, an action was brought before the High Court, and the High Court ruled against him on the basis of NLCD 112. Now, in 1980, when that happened, he continued to now reign. The Mamprisi continued to reign, but shortly afterwards, the Mamprisi chief of Bawku, from the Mamprisi side, passed away in 1981. So when he passed away, they were now to perform the funeral to enskin a new chief. But before that could be done, the PNDC government, indeed, Abu Grago had taken the matter to court to restrain the Nigeria from enskinning a new Bawku chief. So when he did that, the High Court again, the National House of Chiefs, the High Court ruled against him, had already ruled against him earlier before the Bawku Naba from the Mamprisi side died. Now, when it happened, Abu Grago then filed a case before the National House of Chiefs. And the National House of Chiefs again upheld the decision of the High Court. It went on and ruled against him and described him as a commoner, and that a commoner will not have any authority to call on the enskinning authority of the Bawku skin to restrain the person from continuing to enskin chiefs, of which he had that particular traditional power to do so. So when that happened, the decision was made or was rendered by the National House of Chiefs in May 1983. And later in December, the PNDC government came out with the PNDC Law 75 and restored, Abu Grago. And interestingly, after the decision in May, later in August, Abu Grago died. And somewhere in December, the PNDC Law 75 came. And it was to take effect in February 1984. So when the PNDC law took effect, Abu Grago's son, who is now the Abu Grago Azoka II, took over as a chief as far as the father, because PNDC law 75 restored the father posthumously. So indeed, the Mamprisi could not, because this was now a law and this was a military government in power, the Mamprisi could have to lay low until when NDC changed. There was change of government in 2001. So following the change of government in 2001, the Mamprisi then brought the matter before the Supreme Court to declare PNDC Law 75 as inconsistent with the Constitution. Now, when they brought the action, interestingly, PNDC Law 75 had already been repealed by the in 1996 by the Law Revisions Act. It repealed several, various laws in the country, including the PNDC Law 75. But this was not known to the Mamprises until when they brought the matter to court. So when they became aware of it, what they quickly did was that they filed to discontinue the case before the court of law. Indeed, the action was filed in February 2003. And in March, 29th March, was when the Abu Grago team also filed their defense. And when the Mamprisi then got to realize, then they filed for discontinuation of the suit on the 28th of April 2003. And the following day, 29th April 2003, the Supreme Court granted the discontinuation of the suit but without liberty to reapply under the same provisions. So this happened, and the Mamprisi were now, now felt that, oh, well, then we can now go and perform our funeral because we're restrained by PNDC Law 75. PNDC Law 75 is no more there. So, and the effort to perform the funeral could not occur until late part of December 2021 was when the funeral was performed. And as following the performance, the government became dissatisfied and issued, and got those who supported in the performance of the funeral arrested. But subsequently, we had the issue of the enskinment also taking place in 2023. So when the enskinment came into being, government again issued an arrest warrant initially against both the Nairi and the Bawku Naba enskinned by the Nairi. But later on, this was varied to exclude the Nairi, and the arrest warrant was still on the Nasirga, from the Mamprisi side, Nasirga Aseru Abagri. And indeed, when that happened, it was challenged before the High Court in Bolga. The High Court ruled in favor of the warrant. It was appealed to the Court of Appeal, and the Court of Appeal in October 2023, set aside the arrest warrant. And following that, Nasirga was able to go back to Bawku, where he was originally born. So indeed, what is happening now is because of the challenge of security, and the matter is now before Otunfo for mediation. Now, having set out the background, just to put us on the same page in terms of the historical background, I want us to go further to now look at it in terms of the issues at stake that the parties actually are contesting is rooted in overlapping claims as being the first occupant of the land in the Bawku territory. So the point is, or the question is, whose claim should actually count in this particular context? And and looking at it within our requirements, or the settled requirements as far as land ownership is concerned, or if you are laying a claim to owe a particular piece of land, the law, there's a settled position of the law as far as the various requirements that must be satisfied. And the court in 2011, the Supreme Court actually indicates that if you are claiming or laying claim to have ownership to a particular land in the course of litigation, you have the burden to prove beyond reasonable doubt that you owe that particular piece of land. It is only when you succeed in doing that, on a balance of probabilities, that the court will look at the matter in your favor. Now, what are the various criteria as far as ownership of land can, under the law in Ghana? We find that in the case of Ohimen and Ajay, 1957, this decision was rendered, interestingly, in February 1957. That is about 4 months before the chieftaincy dispute actually started. And in this particular decision, again, presided over by Justice Olenu, he did highlight 4 requirements that must be met. And that is what I've just highlighted in here. So he indicates that you can become the owner of a piece of land by either conquest and subsequent settlement thereon. So prior to, so your ownership to the land is only to be judged against you being able to conquer a particular tribe and then, or conquer earlier settlers, and you subsequently settle there and cultivate the land and use the land, then you can claim ownership. That's one of the grounds upon which one can lay claim to being the owner of a piece of land. Now, he also added that you can also discover a land as a pioneer or as a hunter. So discovery by hunters or pioneers of the land, and subsequent settlement thereon and use of that particular piece of land. It could also be gift by the owner or the original settler of that particular land, or it could be by what purchase. So we have 4 requirements that must be satisfied. And if those ones are satisfied, so the question is, these are settled positions. And indeed, over the years, the Supreme Court has described this as a locus classicus of, land requirement, of the land acquisition requirement or land ownership requirement as far as the law in Ghana is concerned. So in this particular place, I've just highlighted about 2 cases here of which the court re-echo the same position in recent time. So having said that, let's look at the contested claims to see how we can, so you look at the various requirements, each party appear to be claiming to be the first occupant or to be the owner of the original settler of the place, and the other is a migrant, or the other came to meet them there. Let's look at the anthropological data to reflect on it. And the essence of looking at this is not to undermine any person's position or claims, but just to bring out what has been documented. And then we'll see where, in fact, the connections are even. Now, the first one, let's take, before the Opoko Afari committee, Abogrago made, the first person who was appointed or declared by the youth as the chief of Bawku, or the chief of the Kusasi area, which is now Bawku. What did he say? He said before the committee that they were, that the Mamprisi came with a white man, and they were able to, run, they were the chiefs, or their ancestors were the chiefs, and the Mamprisi came with the influence of the white man, and they were able to actually, and the Mamprisi were well organized. They met the white man first, and because of that, they were able to use this, the white man influence to actually usurp their skins, and then became the chiefs in Bawku. This was what he said. And interestingly, we see that again reflected in the the Court of Appeal then, which was the highest court of the land, judgment. And that's the one I've just added as, I just took a picture and then inserted here. So what he said, the court, it impacted, or that was the grounds or the basis of the decision of the Opoko Afari committee, which I mentioned earlier, was being contested before, when the government adopted it, was being contested before the High Court and then overturned by the Court of Appeal. And indeed, the Court of Appeal made an interesting statement that the fact that
yes, man.
It was laid before the Court of Appeal, the High Court, and the High Court allowed that to, admitted that as evidence before it.
Stay with the high Qatar line or the back.
Please, can you mute yourself if you're not?
I'll really plead with everyone to mute yourself and allow the guest speaker to deliver. Sorry about that, Dr. Nuhu.
Mute. Okay. So
sorry about that.
Yeah, that's okay. Thank you so much for your intervention. Yes. So as I said, the pronouncement of Abogrago before the Opoko Afari committee was the basis upon which the decision was rendered in favor of Abogrago. And the same reasons was the basis upon which the Court of Appeal upheld the decision of or restored the decision of the government. Okay, and before the High Court, the High Court judge, Justice Oleno, demanded government to produce before the court the report, the Opoko Afari report, but government declined against the view that it was of public policy purposes. They are unable to give the report to the court. But just before the decision was made, at the last hour, local government minister gave these 4 points highlighted in the Court of Appeal decision that Abugago Azoka is a direct descendant of the former rulers of Bawku. And remember, he said his parents, the ancestors, were the original settlers, and Mamprisi came with the white man to evade their palaces and took over their skins and converted to Mamprisi, chiefs. Now, again, that the government also added before the court that Bawku is a chief town and administrative center of the Kusasi area. Now, they also indicated that at least from 1932, the chief of Bawku is the one who is recognized as the chief of the entire area. And also that on the 6th June, Abugago was elected and installed as a chief of the Bawku area. Indeed, this was what was submitted before the High Court by the government from the committee's report. And as I mentioned, the committee adopted or accepted vividly Abugago's submission before it and gave the decision in the way it did. Now, but when we look at the recorded documents, Hilton, 1962, actually documents that the Northern Territories came under the British rule in 1893. And the administration actually commenced in 1907. And Bawku became a government station in 1909. Interestingly, indeed, what Hilton said has also been confirmed by Syme in page V of his work to 1932, where he also actually acknowledged that the station in Bawku started in 1909. However, if we come to look at the Mamprisi settlement or the chieftaincy in the area, Najbewa, who is the ancestor of both the Gombes, Mamprisis, Nanumbes, and Moses, alongside Wallace and the Bulses, or the chief palace in the Bulsa or Bulsa area. So let me put it that way. Now, Najbewa settled in Pusaga in the 12th century. But he lived there. Records indicates that he was there for about 60 years before he passed on. Indeed, he became blind due to old age and eventually passed on, following some events, but it's beyond the scope of our present discussion. Now, when he passed on, his son, Zirli, took over. But before Zirli took over, he had committed a crime by killing his brother, Kusoko. So because of that, he ruled for some time. And after him, his younger brother, Tohugu, took over the reign of government in Pusaga. Now, but he moved from Pusaga subsequently to two narratives are given. Some indicates that he moved to Mampurgu. Others indicates that he moved to Gambaga and subsequently went back to Mampurgu. And I just want us to look at the map to locate where Mampurgu is, which is present-day present-day Togo. So you can all see the Ghana map here. So this is okay, let me expand here. so that we could see clearly. Pusaga, you can see Pusaga here. This is Bawku. This is Pusaga, where Najbewa is said to have lived for about 60 years in the 12th century. Now, when he passed on, his son Zirli took over. After Zirli, then Tohugu took over. When Tohugu took over,
sorry for the interruption, Nuhu.
Yeah.
I think we cannot see your graph.
Oh,
your
you
map.
can see.
Yeah. Maybe you have to reshare again.
Oh, you can see it now.
It's still not showing on my side. I don't know if the rest is-
Okay. So sorry for that. Let me, because I think I want you to see this.
You may stop sharing and share it again, maybe.
Yeah. Oh, why is this? Okay, let me close this first.
You need to just move the slide forward.
But you can see the slide now.
Yeah, we see, but move it forward.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is that I think I've stopped sharing now, right? Or you can still see my slides.
We see, yeah, you can
You
see.
still see it. Okay, let me go back to the slides. I'll open this first. Let me open this first. Then I can come out. Oh, okay. So I will stop. Have I stop sharing the other one?
Yeah, you stopped, yeah.
But you can see the map now.
No.
You can see my map now. My page.
We can see, yeah, we can see now.
Okay, so look at the Ghana map. You can see Ghana map here. This is the Bawku area we're talking about. And if you come here, this is Pusaga, and this is Bawku. That's where Najbewa is said to have lived for over 60 years before he passed on. Now, when he passed away, his Zirli took over. After Zirli, Tohugu took over. And when Tohugu took over, some of the historical data indicates that he moved from that place to Gambaga, which is around this place. But others have it that he moved from Pusga to Mamprugu, which is located in Togo. So Mamprugu is here. You can see the Ghana map. I'm just trying to let you see the Ghana map. This is where Mamprugu is. Sorry. This is where Mamprugu is. You can see, when I click, you can see the Mamprugu coming out here. So this is where Mamprugu is located on the map where Tohugu is said to have moved to. So he was just at the corner here, but because of the colonial manipulations or demarcation of our line, they cut Mamprugu out of Ghana and is now found in Togo. Is that okay? So, I mean, we can check that later if we want to just upgrade ourselves with that, with what is happening there. So indeed, Nigeri, Tohugu remained there and eventually moved from, you can still see here, he eventually moved from that place. I mean, he eventually passed away there and was buried in Mamprugu here. So when he got there, when he was buried, his son, Bang Margo, took over.
Oh, well, I thought this was something at 5 o'clock.
And Bang Margo
but already started.
Took over and relocated to Gambaga.
I think the host to mute those who are talking.
And relocated to Gambaga, which is also found here. I mean, just around, just by Nalergo. Nalergo is now the regional capital of the Northeast region. I hope that is very clear. So when subsequently in 1698, then Na Atabia became the Nigeri of Mamprugu. Now, when he became the Nigeri, he appointed Na Tampuri, the first, the chief that handed over to him. He appointed his son to become the chief of Sinbaga here. So this is Nalergo. He moved, Atabea moved from Gambaga to Nalergo. And then from Nalergo, he enskined someone to become a chief in Sinbaga here. Mind you, before I said, what's the name? What's the name? Mamprugu. Oh, Mamprugu is, so I'm inside the map. So Mamprugu was here where Tohugu moved to. So he still skinned chiefs in Pusaga until he passed on, and the son moved back to Gambaga. So while they were in Gambaga, and now Atabia reigned, which is between 1698 to 1741 was the reign of Na Atabia. So Na Atabia appointed chiefs to Sinbaga, Binduri, and later appointed a chief to Bawku. Indeed, the Bawku chief was his direct son. He also appointed chiefs to Bongo. So we can see Bawku here, Bongo here. In fact, Bongo chief and Bawku chief were brothers. They were all the sons of Na Atabia. And within that same period, he also appointed chiefs to other places. But subsequently, and indeed, he also appointed chiefs to another area, Nangodi and Sakot, and Nangodi here, and Sekoto. But all these places are part of the Bolga enclave. They are not part of the Bawku enclave. But where the conflict is rather within this area, coming to all the way to Senbaga, Zangori. They are all inclusive of as far as the conflict is concerned. So just to show what really transpired within that period. So just opposing this. So the point I'm just trying to make here, let me stop sharing this one and go back to our slides. Is that okay? Oh, sorry. Okay, so I'm back to my slides. Can you see my slides now? Yeah. So Togo, as I've said, so he expanded, and it was now Atabia who now appointed the chiefs, as I've just indicated. But something happened while they were in so the time that Najbewa stayed in Pusaga passed on and Zirle took over. What's the name? Hilton is telling us that during those all those events that happened, I mean, it's not something that is known to Kusasi, and in fact, the people they interviewed during their time, I mean, they were doing the interviews or they interacted with the people to collate their anthropological political data. That none of the people, I mean, what happened in Pusaga was not known to Kusasi, and that they only came to know that Bewa and Togo are shrines that they placate, and they all placated that, and that their grandfathers placated that, and they are also placating from what, I mean, Syme actually recorded, which you can see on page 47. And we can see that being supported by Hilton too in page 80. So having, I mean, indicates that, so I've already explained this particular slide where the chiefs in Sinbaga, Binduri were appointed before Bawku, as I've just mentioned earlier. And in moving to that territory, the Mamprisis moved with both Mamprisis and then Narambes. The Narambes are part of the Mamprisis. They are seen as Dagbandurusi, or they are called Dagbandurusi within, I mean, as used from the recordings of Syme. And in fact, that is what is, again, still known today as we speak. So having said that, we move on to look at another contested claim. So if you look at the, I mean, story that Mamprisi came with a white man and ran over their the skins, took over the skins and handed over to Mamprisis by virtue of the influence of the white man, it doesn't seem to add up, particularly when we look at the time of because now Atabia and skinmen took place, the Bawku Naba was skinned in 1741. That's over 200 centuries before the conflict started in 1957. Because if someone was skinned in 1721, when we count down, we'll come to appreciate that 1921 would have been 2 centuries. So it doesn't seem to add up. Yet that was the basis upon which the Opoku Afari Committee gave its decision. Okay, so now another contested claim, which Ratri actually recorded on page 375, is that when the Mamprisi came from Gambaga, they found us here. Indeed, Ratri interacted with, he indicated that one of his informant in Gadiri, was the one who actually made the statement, and he recorded it. And we said, okay, fine. I tried to, interestingly, a number of commentators seems to ask for a question of, that it is important to juxtapose what Ratri actually recorded, because Ratri spent 2 years and he traveled across the entire Savannah region, northern region, northeast region, upper west region, upper east region. So the 5 regions of the north was Ratri spent 2 years in going around the various communities to record the history of people. So his book, you see that he has written on every single tribe, at least something about them in that book. So the question is, he used 2 years, and that time, mobility was not like we have it today. So the chance of him spending even more than a month in a particular community is very less. If he spent even a month in a particular community, is very less. That's what commentators are arguing, that no, look at the time he spent there. If you triangulate it against other data, then it's rather interesting. But Ratri again indicates in 374 that Bawku, that's Bawku, are really Mamprisi, not Kusasi, being founded by the ruling class. Now, Syme went on to indicate that when we come to consider the entire, Bawku is divided into 2 from the records that I'm reading, that we have the Agoli area and then the Tondi, or is it Tondi area. So Agoli and Tondi, and he is indicating that, and Syme was a district commissioner of Bawku for several, for several years. His number of years is not known. I've not come across that, but a lot of write-ups about Bawku, he actually documents that. And several reports that he wrote to wrote back to England were all from Bawku, that he was, when he actually wrote all those things. So he indicates that if you look at Agoli, half of the district of the entire Bawku area, half of it, that it became evident that it is not really Kusasi country at all. This is what he said. So, and we can see this in page 13 of his write-up. He also went on again and said, it became obvious that there is difficulty in finding a typical Kusasi in Agoli at all, if one discounts the recent immigrants from Tondima, who in the last 10 years have crossed the Volta in great numbers. This was what he recorded in 1932. Now, so if you look at it, vis-a-vis the who he spent several years there, just opposing it against what Ratri recorded in his 2 years time he spent in the entire northern enclave, then one may be tempted to think that no, there are a lot of question marks as far as what he's writing and what Ratri actually documented. Now, again, the other contested claim, so moving beyond that particular contested claim, the other contested claim is the fact that Kusasi are the Tindanes, and for that matter, the owners of the land. Interestingly, Syme made us to understand that there were 3 important Tindanes. The 4th Tindana unfortunately fell to the Burkina Faso area, but the 3 important Tindanes during the time they were there was 1, Gombo Naba, Kusa Naba, and Kalense Naba. These were Tindanes from the Kusasi part. And he went on to indicate that. So the point here is that he went on to indicate that this fetish, or this Tindanes, reach out to the Na of Mamprugu or Mamprusi for recognition of their fetish or their Tindanaships. Okay, so indeed they were enskinned as Tindanes by the Nayuri. They came with their own fetish. They had their fetish, but that they reached out to the Nayuri. And when they reached out, that indeed they had a soothsayer who advised them that it was good for them to go and have the Nigerian recognition. And in response to that, they all reached out to the Nigerian and they went with handsome present to give to the Nigerian. So the point I'm making here from this particular data is that there is that kind of a strong connection between the Kusasi Tendanes and that of the Mamprises led by the Nayiri, because they reach out and indeed on their arrival to the Nayiri, he sees them as his guests, and he usually will kill a sheep to honor the guest who came with handsome present for him, and then he will now, based on the sacrifice, that he will now give them a horn with the blood of the sheep sacrificed. So that, and they went back, that anyone who went back and added that particular horn to the fetish, his fetish became more powerful. In other words, it made their fetish power doubled. And in fact, their fame, spread much wider, as recorded by Syme on page 17. So the point is that there's that kind of what connection between Mamprisi and Kusasi in this particular context. But we are going to see more of such, interconnectedness between the two groups who are now, in a dispute over the same territory that they've occupied for several years without any issue. Now, talking about the Tendana, again, interestingly, Syme again record in page 564 that the biggest Tendana in Binduri during Yisa's day, Yisa was the first chief of Binduri. And I've already said, Binduri chief was enskinned before the first Bawku Naba was enskinned in 1721. So the first chief of Binduri was enskinned, and the powerful or the biggest Tendana in the area was Abipora. And in fact, up to the colonial days, the biggest Tendana was still that of Abipora. And indeed, the Tendanas in Pinduri were basically Nabnamba descent. They were basically Nabnamba descent, not Kusasi, but they were Nabnambes. But I will point to you later that Nabnambes today now see themselves as Kusasis. But Nabnambes, like the Narambes, they all came with Mamprisi from Gambaga to settle in the territory. But today, Nabnambes now call themselves Mamprisis. So if Nabnambes, they now call themselves as Kusasis. So if Nabnambes were the Tendanes, basically not Kusasis themselves, as we know, but today, that same Nabnambes, who are also seen as Mamprisis from the Dagbandursi group, now see themselves as Kusasis. And we take arms against each other. Mamprisi are taking arms against Mamprisi in this context, if I look at it from that particular context, and you can see. Now, we move on to look at, but the point is that aside Kusasi being Tendanes, those who reach out to the Nigerian for recognition of their fetish, there are other groups that were also Tendanes. And we can see, as illustrated by Syme on page 64, where he indicates that most of the Tendanes in this part of Binduri were Nabnambes descent. And again, not only Nabnambes, who today see themselves as Kusasis, were Tendanes alongside with the initial Kusasis, as mentioned in the case of Kusanaba and then Kalisanaba and then the other places. Now, we also have the chief of Tanga, the first chief of Tanga, who was also a son of the Nayiri, Nakulba. He appointed the first chief of what? Dambongu was the first chief of Tanga. And that, as you can see, it's also on page 73 of Syme's work, where he indicates that when he came to Tanga, it was in a bush area. So he collected people. In other words, he had people from the Tok. The Tok is part of Zebila. He had people from Zebila and other places to settle with him. And he himself was virtually the Tendana. So Mamprisi, he was himself a Tendana, but he handed over the responsibility to a man from Sakum. So you could see again here that Tendana is the landowner we are made to understand by commentators. Commentators made us to understand that a Tendana means landowner, but it has varying interpretations. And we can see from this context that besides someone who was the first person to settle there, he appointed another person to act as what? Tendana. So let's move further. Now, we also have the case of Zongori, which is also another area where Kusasi, as you can see from sign page 84, where he indicates that the story goes that when the Gingas got down to Zangori, the country was practically all bush except for a small settlement of Mamprises. So when they came, it was bush, but there were some settlements, small settlement of Mamprises. And interestingly, the Najiri, whose son was the chief of the area, Sabi Boba, as recorded in Simon's work, the father desired him to return to Nalirgu site, and that he decided to go back. And before going back, he gave all the land to the Kusasi who migrated to the area, with the exception of Yimbuni, where there were some other Mamprises residing there. So Zongori, the Kusasi who came to Zongori, they came and met some Mamprises there from this particular narration, if they were factual. Now, following that in honor of Sabio Baba, the chief who was being called by the father to return to Gambaga area, they decided to name the Tendana after the Mamprisi, and that's why they call the Tendana as what? The Atiri, is it Atiri Mamprisi? But the Atiri was a Kusasi, but he decided to add Mamprisi in honor of the donor of the land. Okay. So, but again, as I said, the idea of Tendana has varying interpretations, and arguments or write-ups in other contexts demonstrate, like Ilyasu in the early 80s, documents that a Tendana is mainly, and in fact, other writers, several writers, is mainly like a priest, okay, appointed to take care of a particular shrine. And I just want you to listen to this, and I'll comment on it. It's just a brief one. Oh, okay. So, so what the man is just saying is that that Tendana, this is from Dagbang. Okay, I think there were some debates. I don't know the circumstances, but there were some debates probably relating to whether a Tendana is a owner of the land or not. And he is disputing that there's nowhere in Ghana that a Tendana owns a piece of land. That Tendana is only appointed to take care of the gods, to take care of a particular shrine, as I mentioned earlier. This is what he is saying. He's a Dagomba. And indeed, you look at the narrations from the other context, and what we are seeing clear is that several tribes in the territory were being appointed as Tendanas. But it appears commentators, I don't seem to actually pick on this, particularly based on what is documented from the early writers. So now, again, there's also another argument that Mamprisi were settled in the 1721, and Sinabaga, Bindure, Ukambo, they were settled there to maintain trade route between Nalirgu and Gambaga. Okay. And again, if you look at that, I want us to look at the story Simon again recorded on page 43, where he talked about Chief of Yanga. And I will want to take you back to the map that we did. He made mention of the time that the British actually arrived. During the demarcation period, anyone who comes, if it's a German, when they arrive in a community, they erect their flag. It belongs to them, Germans. If a British man arrive in a particular community and erect their flag, it belongs to the British. Likewise, if a French person arrive in a community and erect their flag, that community belongs to the French. So when the Nigeri, then Nabarga, realized that other groups of people Europeans were taking over land, that he sent some delegates to go with troops to prevent the takeover of Yanga area as part of the the French people. But when they arrived, the group arrived in Bawku, they got frightened because the French people had also, the French people also came there. And when they arrived, they met with the British alongside with the Nigerian delegation who arrived in Bawku. And the people got terrified and decided to return. They could not proceed to get to Yanga. The question is, where is that Yanga? And I wanted us, if you look at, if we go to the map, you won't see again, right? Oh, I have to stop sharing and I can share this again. Sorry, we'll go back shortly and we'll just finish up. We'll look at the.
Yeah, hi. Dr. Nuhu, I'm happy you did touch on the fact that you'll be finishing soon because it looks like you have about 10 minutes to wrap up.
Okay, I will do so. So now this is, if you come, this is Bawku, this is Yanga area that I've seen on the map. I see Yanga here, which is where the Nigerians sent a delegation to go and prevent, and he highlighted that it was his. It was his, and that it's not fault, but unfortunately it fell to the French and then they have to run back. Now, coming back to, let me discontinue this and share the other one, then we can run fast and see where we are going to get to quickly. So coming back to the slides. Okay, so I've just explained this. Sorry. Can you see my slides now? Yeah. So, and if you look at the constitutional requirement for dispute like we have, the Constitution set out the pathway through which such disputes could be resolved. And if you have a chieftaincy dispute, where you will go and have the matter resolved is the regional House of Chiefs, and the regional House of Chiefs will be required to set up a judicial committee to look into the matter. If a party is not satisfied, he will have to make an appeal to the National House of Chiefs. And if the National House of Chiefs also look into the matter and you are not satisfied, you can appeal to the Supreme Court for a binding and final determination on that matter. Now, we can see that under Article 274, where the Constitution provides. And again, the Chieftaincy Act also re-echoes the provisions of the Supreme Court, the Constitution. But there is something interesting here that I want to point out. The Supreme Court have said a number of times, but I just highlighted a few case law to demonstrate. In the case of Aqua and Apa case in 1998 to 1999 Supreme Court decision, the court made it clear that the Judicial Committee of the National House of Chiefs, in looking at a matter, they are not to, they have to look at the merit of the argument of the parties and give their decision, but not to reach a compromising, resolution. So if the parties appear before the Supreme Court, the court must, and at all costs, examine the facts presented or argued before the committee and come out with a decision without looking at, pleasing both parties. And this re-echoes an earlier decision of the court in 1991, where the court again made the same, pronouncement. And in 2022, we have the court again re-echoing the same position. So the point is that once you are, going through the, what's the name, the National House of Chiefs and the Judicial Committee is to look into the matter, they are bound by the Supreme Court decision to look at the merit of the case and to give a decision. However, the parties we are talking about seems to be glued because each party has enjoyed the luxuries that comes with the power of chieftaincy, and they don't want to let go. They don't want to let go, and that is why we continue to have what we have. Even though this is the legal procedure we can go, but I think there are still room for us to look within ourselves and to actually allow the matter to be resolved. First, Kusasi and Mamprisis are originally playmates. They are original playmates. And indeed, one informant to Ratri actually made it clear that, they are playmates because they intermarry and they play. That the only people that they don't play is Moses, because Moses, they eat fowls. And because they eat fowls, they don't play with them. But when it comes to both Mamprisis and both Mamprisis and Grunsis, they are playmates. So if they are playmates, but for political interference, we now have what we have. I think it's not good enough. Let's go back and play as playmates and continue to live together in peace. Now, again, the chief of Binduri, as I said, was, I've already discussed this, where he was a Tindana, the Tindana that he had there was a Nabdam. And as I said earlier, Nabdams today see themselves as Kusasis. So if they see themselves as Kusasis, is there any basis? And meanwhile, their origin is also Mamprisis. So Mamprisi going after Nabdams to attack and kill, or Nabdams going after Mamprisis to attack and kill, or to attack their houses and burn, please, you are burning or killing your own brothers. Let's stop it. Again, we also see that the Agoli was originally largely inhabited by Nabdams, the Agoli area. And the Nabdams, what the sign indicates, that they trace their origin to the Frafra country. The Mamprisi chief came from Gambaga, bringing many with them, among whom the Narambes were perhaps the most numerous. They are of Mamprisi origin, but are supposed to belong to the Dagbandursi group. So if you are Mamprisi origin, and today, not only Nabdams, but in fact Narambes, they now see themselves as Kusasis. If Narambes are now attacking Kusasis, Mamprisi to kill, or Mamprisi is attacking a Narambes to kill, you are just killing your brothers. Please, let's stop it. Now, we also see the same thing from Hilton, who also documents that Agoli was largely inhabited by followers of Mamprisis coming in from Gambaga, of whom most of them are Narambes of Mamprisi origin. So what are we doing? So it's good we have recognition of our shared identity because we are one. There are intermarriages between both Mamprisis and Kusasis. In fact, not only Mamprisi and Kusasis in the Bawku territory, but Mamprisi and Kusasis across the country who happen to locate in other places. They met each other and a lot of them got married to each other. There's no point we killing ourselves. If a Mamprisi to kill, then you are killing your father or your wife or your husband's parents and their siblings. This is not right. And again, we have already highlighted that Nabdams, Narambes, Moses, Bimobes, and Talenses are seen to have, in fact, if you trace properly well, you come to appreciate that they all have the same origins. And these are the same people occupying the territory, and they are the same people attacking each other and destroying each other and destroying the future of each other. Now that we have mediation ongoing before the Asantehene, it is important for us to be prepared to give consensus and to allow a resolution to be reached. Even if it is that you should have shared ownership of the place, please let's consider that as a better alternative for the sake of the innocent majority who stay in the area, and in fact, the innocent majority Ghanaian who travel to the area for commercial reasons or for one thing or the other. It is important for us to actually reflect on this, share identities, the intermarriages, the fact that, majority of Kusasi or a good number of Kusasi today have their origin as Mamprisis. It is important that Mamprisi exercise restraint, Kusasis exercise restraint, and let's seek for a resolution of the matter. It's important. And we cannot settle the matter without looking at our historical roots. The legal position in court may not give us, it will be a one-win situation. And it depends on how the court will actually reason on the matter. Because once the judicial committee gives their decision and you are even not satisfied and you appeal to the Supreme Court will eventually give the decision in favor of one party, subject or based on how they see how the court actually see it fit. And when that happens, one party will lose out. And given the fact that you are one, it is important that you compromise and let's bring an end to the violence. Let's bring an end to the conflicts that we have suffered for all this while. Let's acknowledge our shared heritage and the fluid ethnic, commonalities that we share. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yidana. This is very insightful. I have never thought about some of these things that go on in the background before a chief is installed. But to be honest with you, you've given us a very, very, very candid insight into what happens, and to be precise, what has happened in the Bawku area. So we have a few minutes for question and answers, and we'll open the floor for anyone who has questions. We are open to question and answers. Yes, we have Audu Ahmed. Audu Ahmed, please, you can go ahead.
Thank you very much, moderator, and for giving me the floor. And I also like to use this opportunity to really congratulate Dr. Nuhu Yidana for a very, very brilliant expose, which touches on the fundamentals of the conflict in Bawku, and then recommendations on what needs to be done, to resolve the issue. I have a few issues that I wanted to raise. One key issue I wanted to raise is in respect of the use of the word Tindana, because that is one of the crux of the matters in Bawku, where Tindana has been misinterpreted to mean landowner. And I would like probably Dr. Yidana to throw more light on that, to redefine or to define what really Tindana means, because one of the issues of contention is the misuse of the word Tindana to imply that the Kusasis are really the landowners of Bawku. And these are the underlying factors, and which is why the conflict keeps on simmering. So maybe you might want to throw light on that so that we get a very concise definition of what Tindana is. And you acknowledge in the presentation that the Tindanas recognize the Nairi, and then they visit the Nairi to get legitimacy, and then for him to give them the mandate to exercise their Tindanship. So if the Tindanes have that recognition of the Nairi, what does that mean? Does that also imply that they recognize the fact that the Nairi is the owner of the land? in which is why they have to, really go to him, for this pacification and for them to be able to exercise their internship. And then one issue that you raised was the fact that the Kutasis and the Mampuchis are playmates. I stand to be corrected, but I have never known that Mampuchis and Kutasis are playmates. Well, there's intermarriage, a lot of intermarriage between the two tribes. But I know that Mampuchis and Grumes, for instance, Mampuchis and Chekosis, for instance, are playmates. But I've never really known that Kutasis have any playmates. What we know is that Kutasis don't really have any playmates, which is strange because there's no tribe in the north that doesn't have any playmate except the Kutasis. And maybe you can educate me more on that. But I have never known that Mampuchis and Kutasis are playmates. So this is the these are just the few issues that I wanted to raise. And then also there was a town that you mentioned, and I think you didn't mention the name very well, and people might not have understood the location. That is Zongoyiri. You mentioned as Zonguri, but it's Zongoyiri. So Zongoyiri is the town, and I'm sure if people heard you very well, they would understand that it's the town which was originally Mapuche town, and eventually they had to move to another place. So these are the issues that I wanted to raise. I'm sure maybe other issues will come up. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. So we have Sheikh Ismail. Sheikh Ismail is next. If you have any question, please go ahead. Sheikh Ismail. Pastor Sheikh Ismail. Okay.
Hello, do you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay. First of all, I must commend Dr. Yidana for the insightful presentation. He has actually educated us very well, and then we hope that some of these lectures come up sequentially so that we will always benefit from his pool of knowledge. Secondly, looking at the historical background is actually important, but currently as it stands now, I believe that the future is what is more important now. So I would suggest that among his recommendations or propositions, he can write, if it can reach those who are into the mediation, he can write to them to propose that if the Bawku land can be divided, the Mamprusi populated areas will be ruled by a Mamprusi king, and then the Kusasi dominated areas will be ruled by a Kusasi king. I believe that when there's division and they install two kings for both the disputed parties without necessarily choosing one, because there has been moments where a Kusasi was a king and another moment where a Mamprusi was a king, and yet it didn't resolve the situation. So if the two of them, palaces are built for them in their most dominated areas, then I believe that the leadership struggle between the two respected tribes will come down. So I want to propose that in his recommendations, he can maybe effect something like this. And if it is possible, table it in front of the mediators, or even if it has to go through the politicians so that they can process it and get it to the mediators for them to facilitate it and make sure that peace prevails in the permanent state instead of the temporary ways we have been we have been doing for all these years. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Moderator, so I go on as a whole. Should I respond now? Prof.
Yeah, go ahead. No, yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah,
thank you
go
so
ahead.
much. So both of you, thank you for your insightful contributions and questions. I will tackle Mr. Audu's question first. Mr. Audu, thank you so much for your comments. And you asked about the Tendana and landowners, and I've actually engaged with that, handled the things. But the question you want to find out is whether the Kusa Naba, Kalensi Naba, and the other Tendanas from the other priests from the Kusasi who reached out to the Nigeri as documented, whether that was a recognition of his ownership of the land. Indeed, from the records, I didn't touch on all that, but I touched on the fact that when Syme indicates that, oh, the Agoli area was purely not a Kusasi country, but I mean, he indicates, I didn't add that, he indicates that at the time they came even, anyone moving from Agoli to Tondi will say he's going to Kusasi. So during that days, the area called Kusasi was actually the Tondi area. So, but the records also indicate that some of the communities that the Kusasi originally came from Bengu, Ayuga, and Zauga, presently located in Burkina Faso. That before, when they were migrating to those places, I mean, from that places, they arrived in certain communities and replaced early Mamprisi settlers. That's what the story indicates. If only what is recorded is true, I don't know. But what Syme records and what Hilton, I mean, those colonial writers actually record, I intentionally decided not to pay attention to or dwell on recent academic commentary because we may, there are a number of reasons why I did so. But again, looking at what they documented, some of the settlement areas, and in fact, the first person to settle in Zebila was also from Datok, which is a Talensi person from Datok in Talensi area now. But he came and settled there because of, again, after the Nigeria gave him a fetish. So I don't know whether that was the discussion that happened and then they decided to reach out to the Nigeria, or it was out of their shared recognition of the fact that, oh, once Mamprisi were the early settlers here, and again, I mean, we want to be recognized. That was the reason why they reached out. I'm not so sure. The data did not point out that to me. But I mean, one could envisage that once they arrived and there were other chiefs in the area who has that strong connection with the Nigerian, and they also wanted to be recognized, then that's why they decided to reach out to the Nigerian. Now, on the issue of playmates, well, I saw it on the what Ratri actually recorded, and that is where I pick it from. And if you look at the rationale behind that recording, that they are playmates or they play because they intermarry. And because they intermarry, that's what they play. So I don't know, I'm not sure whether is it because of the conflict that actually started during the colonial era, during the independence time, 1957, whether that has actually brought about, could that be the reason that is why there's no more, interplay or, play between Kusasi and Mamprisi? I don't know if that could be the reason. And if it is that they were playmates earlier, but that happened and then they stopped playing. But if you again look at it contextually, I think it is also known, it's a common thing among the northern, tribes, where if someone marries your sister, you, by way, play with the person. You can play with the person because you see him as your in-law, and you can play with that. You can play with your wife's brothers. So I don't know where that's the angle that the informant of Ratri was coming from. That I don't know. So that's what I will comment on to Audu's, Mr. Audu's question. Sheikh, Pastor, thank you so much for your commendation. I'm very grateful. And then thank you so much for your, again, stressing on the fact that they could consider one of the item or one of the proposition that the mediation team could propose to the parties is the idea of dividing the area. But what I understand by mediation, which I discussed previously, is that in mediation, the parties themselves are encouraged to come out with their own concessions. So if they come out with concessions, that is what the mediator will put before the others to get their buy-in. And I mean, he will be back and forth to both parties and press or encourage both parties to come out with some compromises to allow a resolution to be reached. So if the parties are willing to give concessions, this party is willing to give concessions, that may lead to the divisions that we're talking about. But if the parties themselves are not willing to, compromise anything, then it will be difficult for the mediation to actually bring finality to the matter. But we pray that given the interconnectedness that I've just highlighted, the parties should reflect on that. And please consider the plight of the innocent young ones. Because once you kill someone, his dependents, his children, his wife, they are all going to suffer for the rest of their lives. Meanwhile, that person probably might not have, in his life, would not have become even a chief of any place. So I think it is important that the various parties actually reflect deeply on the issues, what is happening, the havoc the dispute is causing to the entire community, as the president recently described, and allow peace a chance. Thank you.
Thank you very much,
very
Doctor.
much.
Before you come in, I will wish to. I've seen that Honorable Mustafa Hamid is is also listening. He joined the program and listening to the seminar. Okay. He is the former Minister for Information and then Minister for Zongo Community, and also the former boss of MPA, that is the CEO of MPA under the previous administration. He is joining us and listening, and I hope. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pastor Ismail.
Dr. Hamid, thank you so much for making time to join us. We are very grateful.
Okay.
Ismail has compelled me to talk. I thought I was incognito. So thank you for the very exciting lecture. I had to stop to go and say my Maghrib and Isha prayers. Yeah. But my intention is to find you later on email or some other means, and then to continue the discourse. But for now, I must say that I have been very well educated. I'm a Mamprusi myself on my mother's side. I had my own ideas before this lecture, but those ideas have changed, and I'll tell you about them. So thank you very much for enlightening me. Yeah, I'm grateful.
Thank you so much, Honorable. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nuhu Yidana. It is very clear the impact that your presentation has made. So we have two new messages here I would like to pick up before we move on. Okay, these are old messages, so we will ignore. Okay, so I think we still have room for one or more questions. The discussion has become very, very interesting. I think if you look at the situation on the ground, it is very, very complicated, far from what we read from the news. So thank you very much, Dr. Yidana, for the insights. We still have room for, yes, I will do Guma. You go first.
Okay. Thank you very much once again for giving me the floor. I'm just trying to play the devil's advocate here.
Go ahead.
So in the event that mediation fails, and there's a very strong likelihood that there will be a deadlock. And I think Dr. Yidana also highlighted on that. If both parties hold entrenched positions, then there might not be a compromise, and the mediation might not result into any amicable solution. In that event, what would you suggest as a way out? Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for your follow-up question. My first of all, my prayers is that there should be, my prayers is that the parties should be willing to give concessions to allow a resolution of the matter. This is very, very important. And like I highlighted, for the sake of the innocent ones, majority are innocent. Just imagine, since 1984, when the current Abugago Azoka became the chief following PNDC law 71. To date, it's over, 1984 to date, that's about 41 years, right? Only one person is a chief. The rest are not chiefs. And the rest who are not chiefs, they are those who are dying. They are those whose properties are being destroyed. So for that sake, for that purpose, I think it's good the parties themselves, because if you become a chief, if you don't become a chief and you allow the person to develop his capacity, develop his skills, and can contribute to society in several ways, it will be very, very important. So my first priority is that the parties should be willing to give peace a chance by providing concessions to allow an amicable resolution of this dispute, by virtue of the fact that we are, there is that shared commonalities, shared ethnic, commonalities in terms of the reaching out to one another from the earlier times. Let's revisit that and prioritize that and allow peace a chance. Now, having said that, in the event that, sad event that a resolution is not reached, then it will not be a good thing for us. For the entire country. And the option that will be left will be which of the parties will be willing to challenge the other before the regional House of Chiefs, because the National House of Chiefs cannot take the matter directly. Ideally, it's supposed to be laid before the regional House of Chiefs. Once they give their decision and you're not satisfied, then you can proceed to the National House of Chiefs. If you rush to the National House of Chiefs, they will lack the jurisdiction to hear and determine the matter. Until the matter is disposed by the Regional House of Chiefs, that is when it can then fall for consideration by the National House of Chiefs. And it is only when the National House of Chiefs also has the opportunity to actually, review the decision of the Regional House of Chiefs, that is when a dissatisfied party can then ventilate his or her grievance, or can then, extend the matter or make an appeal before the Supreme Court for a final and binding determination. So that will be the route to go. But considering the what is happening at the moment, I pray that we don't have, particularly the attacks and counter-attacks, I pray that we don't allow that to happen. Unfortunately, it will also be good for us, while the mediation is ongoing, for the politicians to stop making comments about the whole issue, particularly when those comments are not gearing towards encouraging the parties to reach a resolution, but gearing towards supporting one party or the other. That is going to inflame passions, and that is not going to inure to the benefit of the resolution process. So that will be my suggestion on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nuhu Yidana. So, Sheikh, I'm not sure if you still want to have the opportunity to ask a question. If so, you can. I'm not sure if it's the hand raised from previous.
Yeah, I think that's previous.
Yeah, okay. All right, excellent. So I think we have had a very good interaction on the subject. So it is fair to bring the curtains down. But before that, we want to say thank you so much, Dr. Nuhu Yidana. It's been a very interesting presentation. Your knowledge of the situation on the ground is next to anything. So we really appreciate your coming and also sharing insights on what is happening in the Bawku area. It is our prayer that things will settle down peacefully and we will enjoy the peace Ghana has always had in the sub-region. On that note,
thank you so much,
yes.
Prof, for giving me the platform to share my thoughts so far. I'm very grateful to as well.
Yeah. All right. So on behalf of the executive of the Ghana Scholarly Society, we extend a big thank you to you for sparkling our evening with these insights. Thank you so much. And thank you to all our audience for your patience. We had a very glitchy takeoff, but your patience made this happen. Thank you so much, everyone. And we'll see you again soon next month. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Yeah.
Bye.